Welcome to Cognitive Rampage podcast. This is your host, as always, as usual, Mr. Adam Lowery. Hope you're taking care of you. Hope you're living your cognitive rampage. I am hyped up. You can probably tell it in my voice. I am almost trembling. This is why I do the podcast. It's so neat. Like, you get this adrenaline rush, but it's really just this feeling of uncomfortable, this feeling of new. What I pressed in my book is, seeking out to be uncomfortable. And I haven't done a interview podcast since 4/18 or 4/20 up in Nashville. But that was live. I interviewed about 5 musicians back to back to back for 5 straight hours. And that was intense. But once you're in that zone, you're doing it. But I've taken almost a month off of a direct interview. And since I told everybody on the last podcast we released last week, being back, it was the first time just myself on the podcast. But the interviews always make me a bit nervous, right? Because, I'm interviewing people smarter than me. I'm just putting it out there like that. So what I told you on the last podcast is we're refocusing the podcast to just once a week, but bringing on experts in random fields that bring all kinds of competence. Because in the book, it's the competence that feeds our experiences, that push us to find our passions in life, etc. So for me, I am a competence junkie. That I'm a self-declared. I'm affected by the addiction of competence, and not that I have it, but finding it and feeding on it. So these podcasts are a way that I can share the competence that I'm hopefully acquiring and will assimilate one day, and that you can choose to dismiss or assimilate in your own fashion. But it's about learning things all over. The inventory that I have in my book, by the way, shameless plug, which is now available on Amazon. Hit the Cognitive Rampage, a dose of authentic revelation. We talk about testing all these kind of interests and chasing small little interests that we have that you never know could turn into a passion. And so I try to investigate many different topics and areas of expertise to see what competence it can bring. Because we can, use any bit of information and competence in various aspects of our lives. So without my long tangential run, which has already taken place on the intro, we have our guest today, which is Dr. Richard Feenstra, who I could give you a long interview or a long intro, which I may do once we go back and edit it, but the expert's mouth about what do you do. So first off, how are you doing, Dr. Richard? Thanks for coming on. Appreciate it. Tell the world about what you do, my friend.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for having me, Adam. It's great to be here. I love your book. Highly recommend it. Basically, what I do and the expertise that I offer is a little varied, a wide variety. We've all gone through different life experiences. But what I've found over the last few years is the 3 areas that people seem to enjoy talking to me about the most is first, for the last 4.5 years, I've basically been a digital nomad. I've been traveling the world.
I like that, man. The digital nomad, the tribe of change, that fits into it, man.
Yeah, exactly. And, it is definitely a different lifestyle. About 4.5 years ago, I sold everything and I headed off to Colombia to learn how to speak Spanish. And since then,
what? So, wow. So you too have experienced this walkabout idea, this shedding of everything in a moment's notice and running. Or not running, but go exploring to find.
Yeah, I mean, I had already been in a process throughout my life of quite a bit of traveling, but I had spent many years in Las Vegas. I lived in Las Vegas for 11 years. It was the longest place I'd ever lived anywhere. And I just finished up my Ph.D. and I was looking to continue to learn and grow. I was struggling a little bit with that. And so
What's a Ph.D. in?
Well, it's educational psychology. And that's actually another area that I actually offer that people like to talk about. There's actually 2 different areas out of that. One is the learning and technology aspect. People, because as a digital nomad, obviously you don't travel for free. So some people like to know exactly how do I make a living. And I actually used my PhD that right there on that little piece of paper that I received, it says learning and technology. And so I actually teach some courses online at udemy.com. And
I checked out I've been watching them, man. It's your delivery. What I liked is even you did. You sent me just a mock-up playing around with after you read the book for, some of my applications. And I was just blown away with how you took, which, myself had even seen as probably difficult parts of the book for the layman to figure out. And you turned it to this minute and 30-second video, man, to where it was just like a fire hose of delivery that was organized, but yet plain enough, that it was awesome. Your courses are like that.
Right. I mean, well, that's one of my targets, is one of my goals. One of the things I really strive for in life is to take knowledge and make it as simple as possible. I don't enjoy when I'm in a course and the professor or the instructor is droning on and on about a concept that could be explained in a much shorter time frame. So what I try to do is I try to simplify concepts, and in some cases it's hard to do, and you can only get a taste of it or a flavor. So like with Cognitive Rampage, I mean, you have a lot of stuff in there, a lot of good material with these tools, right? And so to me, it's what Cognitive Rampage fits in under my specialties is its own decision-making framework. And so what I did with the video that I created for you, and I'm going to be putting up on my YouTube channel, Decision Skills.
Oh man, thank you. That's kind of you, man.
Yeah, no, I hope that, hopefully it'll drive some traffic, because I know I don't want to ramble or get off too much on a tangent here, but
I'll do that for both of us. Don't worry.
But no, I mean, the video is just kind of a high-level overview of two of the tools that you offer out of the entire book. So it doesn't really give the in-depth view because you've got a lot of content, but I think it'll give people enough taste that they'll be looking for more, because I think your decision-making framework that you provide in Cognitive Rampage really offers something for a lot of different people that they can use in order to make better decisions. And that's really kind of where my focus is with my degree in educational psychology, is not just repackaging the knowledge, but giving people decision tools, because we all need different tools to accomplish different jobs, right? And you even refer to it in your book that what was working in the past might not be working today. And that's because you're using the same tools, even though you're now facing a different environment. You're facing a different job. And so you continue to try to use a hammer when really you should be using a screwdriver, right? So I'm kind of, in a way, with what I offer, is getting people the right tools for the right job as far as relating to making decisions. And so, that's another aspect I offer, and it's really what my courses are about on Udemy, at least the majority of my courses. I have one on grant writing. It's one of my most popular courses. And the reason I did that course is because it's a very applicable course. You can take that, you can learn how to write grants, and grant writers, if you're a private grant writer, independent, I mean, they make between $35 and $150 an hour. So that was kind of the reason I did that one. And then I have a colleague, so I've got a travel safety one, because I've been traveling for 4.5 years now. And so I did a course with him. And then I've got
you have some expertise in like law enforcement, security, and background in that. I want to get to that in a little bit, man. But I have this running storyboard in my head, and I'm stuck back at just becoming Dr. Richard Feenstra in Las Vegas, and you were coming out. This is why I'm trying to crawl in your head. Is what was it like coming out? What was it like finishing the Ph.D.? What was it like finding avenues with the Ph.D.? You said you were struggling at that time as you were entering that time. Can we go back there, and before we build up to that history?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's pretty. I was in the military, but I don't want to date myself. But it was back in the Gulf War. And I was actually only in the National Guard, never was actually deployed, but it was back in the early 90s when Gulf Storm and Shield were, so that kind of dates me. But anyway, after that, I went into law enforcement. I did that for quite a few years, got my bachelor's degree and my master's degree at Texas A&M. And then I was, I really enjoyed being an officer, helping people individually. But I was like, is there something more? And a colleague of mine I still work with today. In fact, it was the gentleman that I did the travel safety course with. He recommended I go to Las Vegas, pursue my Ph.D. So I did that, and after I started to, as I was lining up to graduate with my PhD, this was back in 2008, 2009. The housing market crashed. The economy was kind of taking a little bit of a dive, and at the same time, I was just kind of like, I was having fun at work, just the same as I had fun at work when I was as an officer. But at the same time, I was like, where am I learning? Where am I growing? What's my next rampage? What am I gonna, how am I gonna? What's my next mountain to climb? Right?
Thank you for that. I appreciate the little work in there, man. I dig it.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, so I sat there and I basically did a reflective period. I tried to work out my life plan. And so I went back to my mentor again, and I was like, what's next?
Who's that?
Peter Tarlow. He's a guy of a variety of different talents himself. He's actually been a rabbi for 30 plus years.
How do you spell his last name?
Tarlow, Peter Tarlow. Yeah, so and tourismandmore.com, he started this business about tourism safety and security, and it became an international business for him. He brought on several partners that were security experts in a variety of different fields, but basically mainly focused on tourism venues such as Las Vegas or Orlando, Disney World, and so forth. And he speaks like 6 different. I'm sorry, what?
Isn't that amazing how you can go back to a mentor like that, and blossom into the story you're telling me, man? I always find that so neat how in, a despairing time, most of us, we can go back to where our knowledge started and just, it unfolds what you're telling me now, man. That's, sorry to interrupt you, man. That was yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. I completely agree. And in fact, that's one thing that everybody should strive to do is surround themselves with some go-to people, some go-to mentors, so that, if they're struggling with a particular decision, that's another model, a decision-making framework where when you're struggling with a particular issue, you can reach out to one of your mentors to help guide you in making a better decision. And so for me, I went back to Peter, and he said, well, maybe you should consider learning Spanish because, learning 2 languages can't hurt, right? So of course, I'm like, well, should I do Rosetta Stone or should I take some local, community courses? What should I do? And he says, go down to Columbia, immerse yourself. So,
come on, you can look up a million programs and read a bunch of books, and a few might, but to just say, hey, go on this, I think he was almost telling you, go on this spiritual rampage here, just go down there, immerse yourself in something. I mean, what I just, Peter, thank you for giving the advice, but I think that's just unique. That's so unique to say, don't change careers, don't go back to school, don't create this business, don't get a job, just go away to Colombia.
Yeah, he was tired of me, right? He was trying to get me away. He sent me to, Colombia of all places, right? But
you just said, you know what, I'm going.
Yeah, and so basically I started thinking about, well, how do I, do I go for 30 days? And immerse myself for 30 days? Do I try to take 2 months off work? I mean, how do I pull this off to go down to Colombia? And so I gave it.
You started asking questions and didn't just reject it. Just didn't say come up with a bunch of reasons why you couldn't.
Right. I mean, I was trying to figure out how I could make it work, but at the particular point in time, I was trying to figure out how to make it work while continuing my career in Las Vegas. Right. So I was looking at a 30-day option, and, well, you got to get approval through human resources to take any more time off than 30 days, right? So I'm like, I had all this vacation time built up, and I'd been working, and I was, at the same time, I was like I commented earlier, I was kind of looking for my next rampage, right? So I finally just said, yeah, screw it, and I put in my notice, and I decided, hey, I'm selling everything. I have no other commitments in Las Vegas. I'm a single guy, no family, no kids. So I carry on bag and a personal bag, and I've got eight T-shirts, and that's the way I've been living for 4.5 years.
Man, that is, yes, I just love that, man. That is, anybody listening or watching, if you can just think about what that feels like right now, if you had to just drop everything, resign from a career that you took a PhD in, and walked out and just said, you know what, I'm going to go, and you don't even speak the language, and I'm going to go move somewhere.
Yeah, and of course, speaking the language was a little bit of a hurdle. My very first week in Colombia, Bogota, there was these big riots and protests, right? And this public transportation system was shut down. The riot police came in, and so I couldn't even get back to my to the house where I was staying with a family that they only speak Spanish. And so, in my best potential Spanish that I'd learned in 3 days, I went up to these police officers and asked them, how do I get home? And they had big smiles on their faces, and they were, this guy trying to, can't speak Spanish, and they just pointed me in the right direction. And then this wonderful older lady, she kind of guided me to another system, another public transportation system, and everything was okay. But I got to add that was actually when I first came across the riots and I realized I couldn't get home. I won't deny that my actual first response was I went to a local bar, had a couple beers. I was just kind of waiting for the riots to kind of quiet down, the transportation system to open back up. I thought it would be a kind of a short-term thing, but anyway, I don't want to get too in depth into that. But
why? I think it's amazing. So the planes are landing anyway, tourists coming in regardless of the riot potential boiling there. So, could you feel like the energy in the street, and that was just like, holy shit, I got a whoa, or what?
Yeah, well, I got some video of it actually. These students up on top of these public transportation systems, they'd actually taken over one, and the police had surrounded it, and they were just kind of waiting for these students to come down. And then in other areas, there were police on motorcycles with tear gas. And so that was my first week in Colombia. But really, I'm kind of giving Colombia a bad name right now. And actually, it's a very peaceful country. It's a great place to stay. In fact, I've now been there 4 times in the last 4.5 years. And do what?
Yeah, I was just reinstating. Yeah, it's a beautiful country, man. And now what year are you talking? That
was 2012.
Yeah, about 4 years ago. That's what I was thinking. And yeah, they went through some issues. A lot of South American countries were going through some things for a while. But Venezuela, etc. But yeah, welcome to Colombia, Dr. Feenstra.
Yeah, but it was a great experience. My family that was taking care of me was great. The people were great. I enjoyed the food, and actually after I got done with 6 weeks in Bogota, then I went to Manizales, where there was a volcano erupting, and the last time it erupted.
Man, I'm glad you're not in the studio. Come on, man! You show up at Colombia and the riot. Are you a CIA agent or something? You said security and law enforcement from Vegas, and then you disappear to Colombia, and now riots start when you show up. Volcanoes go off when you go places. Should I muffle the voice or blur your face on this podcast, man?
Yeah, no, I think we're safe. If I was in the CIA, I don't think Colombia would be where I am right now. I don't know.
Where are you at right now?
Maybe if I was the DEA, right?
Hey, I'm not saying anything more. They know where I live, and they're probably watching this. So, yeah. If you can, what hotel room or safe house are you broadcasting from right now?
Right, exactly. You realize there's no pictures on the wall or identifying marks, right?
Right. So, and you're in a black plain T-shirt. Easily done here. You can grow a beard in a week or 2 here to cover up. So, where are you broadcasting from? Quotation marks.
Yeah. Well, actually, I'm broadcasting from Texas right now,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. You're definitely in the safe house of America, CIA and DEA there, buddy.
Yeah, I mean, I spend about 3 months a year in the United States, and then the other 9 months out of the year I'm traveling.
Wow.
And that just it's not a one.
What is that like, man?
Oh, it's great. Like I mean, it's a different lifestyle. It's and I get a lot of questions about what's it like to just constantly. But it's a lot different than tourism because I'm not switching places every 2 weeks or every week. I basically I pick a city and I stay for 3 months. And so that way I get to know the culture, I get to know the people, I get to make some friends. And in fact, yeah, and in fact, where I'm headed next is to Monte, Ecuador, which I'm going there at the end of May to help rebuild after the earthquake that came through. And so,
wow, man. That's kind of you, man. So, I mean, I'm going back here because I mean, you blow over it like it's nothing, which is awesome. But the idea, I mean, you read the book. I'm just kind of trying to correlate. You pushed an experience that was uncomfortable as shit. I mean, literally a riot. And then you just kept reinventing this experience over and over and over again because you got competent and you found happiness doing it. And
yeah, I mean,
I work doing it.
yeah, I love it. I mean, I can't. It's a struggle for me right now to even think of anything else. Which, of course, I know at some point in time I'm going to have to reinvent myself again because obviously, life changes, things happen, and that's what the point of the Rampage is about: is always being prepared for the next biggest thing, right?
You did it, man. I mean, shit. 11 years law enforcement, right? That's a concreted career retirement. You basically stick it out there, but you don't. You break concrete methods out in Vegas. I say 11 years, you know what I mean, in that area. And then just Colombia. And now look at you, man. For 4 years, you're just traveling the world, immersing, repeating something that fed you happiness, dude. That's some brave shit.
Well, thanks. I mean, I think one perspective it could say that it's brave, but I think another perspective is to say that anybody, if they want to, they can do it. It's not outside the realm of possibility for anybody who if they want to embrace change, if they want to have a rampage, they can do it. It's not something that's beyond reach. And so, and that's what I'm here for as well, because I do get questions by people when I'm traveling, or right now I have 18,000 students in 163 different countries. And so on a daily basis, people are asking me questions, not only about my courses, but also my lifestyle.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you too about how do you stay connected, or do you even feel this need to have some anchoring of home or family? Does that play into it? Because it seems like you're virtually connected all over the world.
Right. In fact, I kind of consider wherever my home is in my heart. It's where I lay my head. And I do stay connected via my social networks and virtually. I mean, it's one of the privileges that we have in the digital age. And kind of a funny story to that is that I was in India and they were not broadcasting Game of Thrones in India, right? So I actually had a Skype session with my parents where they turned around my mom's MacBook computer to face the TV, and the family, we all watched Game of Thrones together, even though I was in India.
Oh.
I mean, it was kind of a weird way to watch Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Hey, whatever.
Yeah, I talked to Jill Wheeler on the podcast. She awesome lady. And anyway, she has been running marathons on her global travel all over the world in a tutu, bringing awareness to well-fit girls. Shout out to that, Andrew Morante. But Jill talked about that kind of life, differently, seeing the world and traveling that way. And then when she's been around people that don't speak English, and then when she is talking to me, she was in, I think, Malaysia at the time. And I was the first person that she had really spoke to from our culture like that and could communicate. So you could see her light up like, yes, it's great, to communicate like that.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it goes back to, if you have students in 163 countries, I'm always talking to people virtually with very different perspectives, because they do live in Malaysia, they do live in Austria, they live all over the world, and they do have a lot of different ways that they make decisions, and they have different decision-making frameworks. They, whether it's a spiritual framework, or a more scientific framework, or a data-driven framework, or a cognitive rampage framework. So that's always fun for me.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you there is, man, you kind of nailed the first question I was gonna hit you with was, obviously you've seen tons of different decision-making styles, skills, the way they go about it, and whether they use values, morals, religion, society constructs, whatever it is on how they use. I was going to ask you, and if maybe you could elaborate on it, because the second part will probably lead to that, is I wrote down navigate beliefs. And so in your courses, how do you manage to navigate the beliefs, like you said, that are so abundant and various and open, to not challenge someone's beliefs so directly that you get conflict of return?
Yeah, I mean, none of my courses that I currently offer, other than the one that I co-authored with, or actually it's his content, but I helped him create the technical side, the instructional design side, is Motivation for Learning and Performance. Dr. Bob Hoffman, I think you've had him on your show. And
twice, and is the #1 downloaded podcast. Yes.
Okay, well, yeah. I mean, so I hope to beat them. Everybody just download this podcast so that I can surpass Dr. Bob Hoffman's podcast. But his course really delves more into beliefs, and how do you not necessarily confront, but how do you navigate those waters of beliefs and so forth. But my other courses, they really stay at a surface level. They're more just general application, and they're very short courses. They're 30 minutes long, about how to be more productive, or innovative decisions, and so forth. And then I have my free course, and I think everybody can benefit from, as far as setting goals using the SMART goal format. And then I have another one on using a problem-solving model called IDEA, where you identify the problem, develop a solution, execute that solution, and then you assess, did this solution work or not work? And actually, as part of being on the Rampage, I've actually created coupon codes for your audience, Rampage, and it gives them a 50% discount. So you just type in Rampage.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And actually, all the proceeds are going to be going to a house down in Ecuador that we're rebuilding. There's a woman, her name is Marisol, and she's a single mother with a son, and her particular house got leveled in the earthquake. I've got a friend down there, Michael Ring, and he's putting together he's got kind of this goal to help rebuild her house. So I'm teaming up with him, and any proceeds that anybody from that goes and signs up and uses the coupon code Rampage, all of those proceeds will go to rebuilding her house.
Yeah, left me speechless, man. I'm all verklempt over here, man. I'm not scared to show my emotion, man. That's a joyful, man. That's kind of you to do so, man. And I hope a person, views. So it's something, I hope 1,000 people view, that's kind of you, man. And to go down there and you put yourself in danger, you do those things. I mean, cleaning up from earthquakes is not safe. And these are rebuilding. These are dangerous tasks, man. And, to do anything small like that, just even having grains of thought, my friend, that's real stuff, man. Thank you.
No problem. For me, I realize that there's I guess you can say, an element of danger of going to those areas. But, I do have 20 years in that field. I've got a soft spot in my heart for first responders. I went to the Philippines directly after the hurricane typhoon whipped, I swept through Tacloban, killed 6,000 people. And I went over there. I went to the volcano.
Man. You've seen some things. My gosh, we don't have enough time in this podcast. to pull all of these experiences I need to extract from you, sir?
Well, yeah. Well, I kind of push the first responder side of my background to the side, because what I found is what most people are most interested about is just my lifestyle, the online courses, and how they can create a lifestyle for themselves using these online courses, and then the decision-making tools such as Cognitive Rampage. But yeah, I mean, I'm also willing to talk about the first responder side. It's just that that's kind of my past life that I did for 20 years. And but I still have a soft spot in my heart, and because I have the freedom to live.
You're doing it now, brother. I mean, it's not your past life. You're going down right now to help.
Yeah, well, true. I mean, I guess you should say it's not my past life. It's that I've already got to that enthusiastic part, which is covered in your book. Is, you know, and I'm 100% enthusiastic about it. So now that's just kind of one of my core who I am, and I just, yeah, you know, for me, going down there is just, why not, you know? So I don't necessarily see it as a danger.
Sure, man. But what some do, man. I mean, I was watching this thing on Vice the other day. They just released it on the polio vaccinators in India. Or I'm not in Afghanistan, sorry. And it's a series worth watching, man. But these ladies, I mean, they're getting murdered. They're getting killed for trying to bring these polio vaccines to these kids. It's the only place left to where it spiked. And just, I mean, so they're just delivering vaccines. I mean, you're still in a dangerous geographic location, the way it's set out, you know, and laid out. So either way, man, your belief sees it as why not? Others would be like, oh, I can't. So, I mean, that's something to be pointed out, I think, man. And, you know, I'm going to go back because we only got 3 hours of a podcast and we're only 30 minutes in. And I know this is going to take every bit of it.
Right.
So, you know, what I've been kind of doing is kind of splitting this, you know, what you do, the competence, and kind of your experience. And
right.
I'm still back at the story to where, you know, you've been in Colombia for a while and looking for what to do. What do you do? What do you immerse yourself in? How do you eat?
Yeah, well, I mean, you know,
it is classified. You can't talk about this version of it.
Yeah, right. Along with Obama's Secret Service, who went to Cartagena, right? I mean,
oh no, man! Google transcribes every one of these things, man. We just got flagged, dude. 2 sentences back to back like that, brother. We are now marked for at least 2 weeks.
Don't worry, I'll reach out to the NSA, right, through my back channel.
Great, thank you. Just good God, man. Well, FBI, CIA, Secret Service, just throw them all. Keep the sentences going, man. Jeez.
Right. We might as well just lump it all together, right? You know,
so much for security, man.
Yeah, right.
Wait a minute. Are you setting me up here, man?
Yeah. No, I think you're safe, right?
Think.
Yeah, I can't guarantee
when anything. A man in a black shirt in an empty hotel room from somewhere in so-called Houston, Texas says, I think you're safe. You read into that a little bit.
Yeah, you might. I mean, you know, well, it depends on what you believe, right?
Sure, until they show up.
Maybe we need to reframe your beliefs.
Oh, no, now you're talking like, what are you trying to extract from me right now, man? What information? I don't know anything.
Yeah.
So what do you do, man? How do you eat in Colombia, man? After the riots? I mean, it was hard for anybody to eat that even lived there and spoke the language.
No. I mean, it was a localized riot to the downtown area. So,
no, I meant at the moment too. I mean, you're landing. I mean, so what do you do, man? What do you walk into? Or career?
Yeah, I mean, well, you know, the first day that I'm there, you know, I get set up with this Spanish family, and then the next day I was going to a structured school. So a teacher came, picked me up at the home, and he showed me how to use the public transportation system that first day. And so it wasn't until the 3rd or 4th day that the riot actually happened that shut down the public transportation system. And like I said, it was a very localized riot. So my main problem was to obviously, you know, don't get involved in the riot, stay a safe distance. Well, I guess, you know, videotaping and stuff, I wasn't exactly staying a safe distance, but.
Or is this perception again we're on to?
Yeah, right. It's perception. So I went into a bar for a couple hours thinking that the riots would just kind of blow over. But then I came back out And
You hear what you're saying, man? I mean, can you hear somebody in Winter Park, Florida, going, "Well, we just went in to have a beer, and the riots would roll and blow over soon." But don't worry, it's just a localized riot. We're good.
well, I guess maybe from that perspective. I mean, I've been in more than one riot. I mean, I've been in a few riots. So
Hold on. So it just keeps going now, man. But what do you mean? That's just the first riot.
well, I mean,
Man.
yeah, I mean,
Whew.
protest. I shouldn't say riots. Maybe protest is a better word. Well, in this case, they did like $400,000 worth of damage, and obviously the riot police brought in. So I guess you could say it's a riot. But
A little bit.
I mean, we're kind of playing. Is it a riot? Is it a protest?
Now you sound like a lawyer, man. Oh, so I don't think I have. I mean, there's so many avenues. My brain is firing, as you can tell, in a million synopsis avenues, man. So don't let me squirrel us off course. You know what I mean? So
No, I mean, no, I got you. I mean, I know you. What we can do some post-edit stuff, right? Put it together. I mean,
no, this is unedited, man. We put this shit up just the way it goes live. We don't edit this thing. So
oh, great. Oh, great. All right. So, because I'm trying not to ramble, but I understand what you're coming from is that the beliefs about what's dangerous, what's not dangerous, and how do you handle certain situations. And obviously my decision-making framework where I come from with a background in law enforcement and fire prevention and the military is, very much rapid decision-making, potentially under pressure. And so for me, I don't necessarily see those situations as particularly dangerous. I mean, I understand something obviously could go wrong. I mean, for instance, probably one of my most borderline situations that happened was in Ecuador. The last time I was in Ecuador, and there was a murder of a politician in the town by these guys on a motorcycle. They'd gunned down this politician. So the next day I woke up and I was just going through my routine, and I was walking to the market, right? And there was this cemetery with a long white wall. And I was just walking along, and I noticed something was a little different. The town was flooded with police officers. And at these two intersections were these guys. They had their machine guns, and they had these checkpoints. And so they had these vehicles pulled off to the side, and they were, how you have window tint, and sometimes window tint might be a little too dark or illegal. Well, they weren't just giving tickets. They were actually on the side of the road there, peeling the window tint off of these people's vehicles. And they had impounded some motorcycles. And so I just kind of was like, okay, that's a little different. And, kept on walking. And all of a sudden this white pickup truck comes up to me, and I look to the side and it says migration, meaning immigration. So I got stopped by the immigration police, and they're asking me, where's your passport? Well, I don't carry my passport on me because I don't want to get it stolen. I just carry a copy of my driver's license. So in my best Spanish, I explained to them my passport's in my apartment. And so they say, well, hop in the back of the truck. And, I kind of laugh because we would never do that in the United States. That would be considered like an officer safety issue to have the person that you're questioning just hop in the back of a pickup truck. But I thought, okay,
I mean, come on, what that means in Ecuador when the cops and immigration goes, yeah, just get in the back.
Well, I mean, I was kind of in a rock and a hard place, right? I've got this, I'm not, what do I do, And you got these guys with machine guns standing around. You've got this pickup truck with immigration on it. But, these guys, they seem friendly enough. And I was like, I don't really have a choice. So I just hopped in the back. They drove me to my apartment. They told me to go get your passport. I got my passport, showed it to them, and they were all good. They were happy. So, nice guys. And, when I look back on it, they were just trying to, check a box so that they could show the post murder that they had been doing their job. And then a couple.
So, all right. I don't want to, I may get in trouble here for saying this, but so riots in Colombia, volcanoes and politicians assassinated every time you're at a place.
You're gonna, yeah, right. It's my fault, right? Somehow every place I go, or you're saying I'm getting a sign there.
I, you just said that, man. I didn't say anything. I didn't say anything. I know nothing.
You know nothing. No, I mean, uh, there's life happens, right? I mean,
oh shit. We know when we all respond with that, what that means.
yeah, I mean, but yeah, I guess maybe it is a little bit of a different lifestyle than somebody from Winter Park, Florida. I mean, you're not going to run into that type of semi-military presence, but down there in South America, it's fairly normal. It's common. They don't have localized police forces; they have national police forces. So it might appear a little bit more dangerous, but really it is just a different belief system, a different way of doing law enforcement down there. So
yeah, I think you qualify for some decision skills programs here, my friend. Definitely. I mean, I'm glad that part worked out, but I'm still trying to figure out what you did for money. I mean, you're at the school, you're through a structured system.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, for the first look, I mean, when I retired from Las Vegas, I had some savings built up, right? Okay. So that was factored into the equation that I might be, have a certain amount of time ramping up to supplement or to make an income. And I'd also just been hired as an expert witness. And so that was also generating a little bit of income.
What's the expert witness? What was that?
Well, there was a case in Chicago where at a convention center where workplace injury, and me being a tourism safety expert that was working for the Convention and Visitors Authority, the lawyers in Chicago thought that I would bring some good subject matter expertise to the case. So they reached out to me, and I've also testified in 2 capital murder trials in my life. And so I had.
Where is your book?
I'm sorry, what?
Where is your book? Where can I find it and read
it? I'm still working on it. I'm gonna model my book after yours. And
no, just write it, man. Wow. Well, I told you we don't have enough. We're already got 2 hours and 15 minutes left. That's it, man. So good Lord, man. Wow.
Well, I mean, testifying in court, especially testifying on 2 capital murder cases, gave me some credibility that I would be good on the stand in a trial. And this particular case, this injury case, was looking like it was going to trial. And so I ended up, while I was in Colombia, I was working as an expert witness, reviewing documents, reviewing depositions. Then I had to get deposed. So I was in Peru when they called me to get my deposition. So they flew me from Peru up to Chicago. And then a few months later, I had the trial there and had to testify at the trial. And we actually won the verdict, and it was a $34 million verdict in our favor. And it was the largest case that they'd actually ever won as far as a financial win. So yeah, and so that that generated a little bit of income.
Yeah, just a little bit. Yeah, I like that. So what you mentioned there, man, was tourism safety and security. So that's kind of where this eventually led to. So your journeys through training and education, social immersion, really pushed you to what you're doing now is kind of traveling and still immersing and teaching this. You said tourism security, expert tourism security.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things, So for instance, after Colombia, I went to Aruba and I gave a speech in Aruba. And that was through Peter Tarlow. He's, the mentor of mine.
Wow.
So, and then from Aruba, that's when I ended up flying to Ecuador. And then after Ecuador, I came back to the U.S. for a little while and then ended up going to Vietnam. And then after Vietnam, I ended up going to Peru. And so, I mean, all of this is happening just, and then from Peru, I can't even remember where I went. Oh, I went back to Colombia. And eventually I ended up over in the Philippines because the November 2013 was the typhoon over there. So I spent some time over there. Last year I was with Dr. Hoffman when we were making his course. I went to Greece, Italy, Spain, and Portugal. Then I also went to India. I stayed in India for 3 months. Probably mixed in another return to Colombia at that point because I've been to Colombia 4 times now. And now, you know, at the end of this month, I'm headed back down to Ecuador. So I think I've covered most
of South America, the whole area. But it seems like you travel, you know, helping people really. Like you're traveling to help rebuild. You're moving to places to where they seem like they're needing help or something. And you, I mean, is that something you're chasing? Is it, or do you even, or is it subconscious that you're kind of going to help people and at the same time you record videos that help people?
No, that's a conscious decision. I mean, that's one of my beliefs. It's one of my fundamental beliefs is that, you know, you add value in life by helping other people in one form or another. And basically, you know, if you're a bread maker, you're adding value by making bread. And for me, with all my years of first responder experience, and then with my doctorate in educational psychology, I look at if I can help people make better decisions, it helps them have better lives and it helps build better communities, right? So my basic mantra is better decisions, better lives, better communities. And yeah,
I like that, man. I like a lot of people. I say a lot of people. I'm generalizing. I don't want to do that. Some people, you know, say they want to help people and find it difficult to specify how they're going to do so, and can speak generally. And what you seem to have done was find more of a very focused area. You know, just as simple as decision making. To others, it may seem simple, but being focused like that, I think you're. I mean, or are you? I could ask you, able to reach more people that way, as opposed to just going here. Listen to me, and I'll tell you how to change your life.
Yeah, well, I mean, I do believe that by being focused, I mean, Aristotle says you are what you repeatedly do, right? And excellence is, you know, it's not an act, it's a habit. So, you know, I've chosen, and to some extent, like you say, purpose find, you don't find purpose, purpose finds you. And so, you know, who knows?
You know how much shit online I took for that quote, that people just ragged me when I was off of Joe Rogan because they played me as one of those, you know, holistic purpose people. And I'm like, that statement, those 2 sentences are probably the least of the whole spiritual world that it could ever really mean. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I mean, but I don't disagree with the statement. I mean, you know, because I deal with this all the time where people are struggling with what is my purpose? And, you know, there is no singular purpose because you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And if all of a sudden tomorrow a family member calls up and says, man, I've got this particular illness, all of a sudden your purpose might transform toward, you know, I can't predict where the next earthquake is going to be, right? So, you know, there's no just determining exactly what your purpose is going to be. I think there's a little bit of a balance. There's a give and take. I'm not just saying that you lay back. You know, there's this statement also, preparation meets opportunity. So you should always be preparing, but you don't know what the opportunity is going to be that's presented to you tomorrow. So for instance, as little as a month ago, I never thought that this opportunity, talking here on Cognitive Rampage, would present itself, right? But all of my preparation, you know.
It's our opportunity, but thank you.
Right? I mean, you know, it's a give and take. And the idea is that there's a little bit of a mix here. I mean, yes, I was a police officer, and yes, then I went into pursuing my Ph.D. But at the same time, you know, and I've always been interested in this aspect of, you know, making decisions, especially when I was an officer and I would respond to these calls and I would see these people and I'm like, how did they make such horrible decisions? Or,
I was going to ask, how did they train you to make decisions as a police officer? I have a personal experience with an officer that made a poor choice based on my poor behavior, but still on that response, it reacted a response in me. at the time in my state. It was my choice to respond how I did. He didn't make me do anything. But so I was going to ask you, how, one, did they teach you to make decisions then? And as you were also said, how horrible it was. You see the differences.
Right. Well, I mean, basically, they use a more, most law enforcement agencies. And obviously, there's a wide difference between, say, one agency and another agency, or there can be. But obviously, one of the focuses on decision making is, first and foremost, the protection of a person, life. And so a lot of training, a lot of emphasis is placed on, say, training how to make decisions under pressure. And that's mainly through this, repetition and practice. And so if you look at Gary Klein's work on naturalistic decision making, he's another person I would consider to be kind of a mentor, because he has used a technique called cognitive task analysis to look at how do first responders make decisions. And whether it's nurses, whether it's firefighters, whether it's the military, he has looked into this. He's interviewed them, and he looks at it as you make a recognition primed decision based on your past experiences, and you play a mental simulation of, if I choose this decision, how will it play out? And if in your mind it works, then you test it. And if you find out that it's not working, then you go to the next option. And this is different. This is sequential decision making versus concurrent decision making. So concurrent decision making is when you're sitting around a boardroom, you've got plenty of time on your hands, and you say, let's lay out all the options, option A, B, C, and D. And then let's look at the pros and cons of each. And then let's eliminate and come down to the optimal or the near best solution. Well, that's great when you're not operating under pressure and time constraints. So it's two different decision models, right? So when it comes to training police officers, a lot of time is spent on teaching them sequential decision making. Now, if you went to any police department and you said, well, what type of decision making do you teach? Most of them would just hand you their policy and procedures handbook and say, this, because they're not theoretical, and I don't expect them to be. They need to be applied from an applied perspective. So a lot of times,
how does a cop apply a book so thick? It seems like they, couldn't we filter? Like you're saying, sequential, like you say, something simple, but instead you said they hand you a 2-inch thick policy book.
Yeah, a lot of times accredited agencies have to meet 700 different policies and procedures, right? But you have to realize that our brains we have amazing capacity in our brains. I mean, what we do is when you're responding to, say, a domestic violence call, you have a schema, right? You have a role, and if you've ever heard of role and script theory, right? So you basically put that comes to the forefront of your mind, that particular part of the policy manual, and all of the other pieces of the policy manual, you're not even thinking about. You're not thinking about, where exactly the badge needs to be placed on your uniform at the time that you're responding to a domestic violence call. And it's kind of similar to your life plan approach, right? You have your beliefs, and you're not when you go to eat, you're not thinking about your beliefs related to travel. You're thinking about, remember that certain foods are healthier.
Yeah, I was speaking in haste there too. The more you started speaking, I kind of said, you know what? The playbooks that they handed us in football, on some of the upper levels, you would literally look at it and go, "Are you kidding me?" In 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and that was just defensive playbooks, So yeah, and yeah, that's sometimes I speak a little quick.
Yeah, but I mean, it is kind of the same concept, right? I mean, you've got this huge, thick playbook, and you're able to absorb it, and you're able to apply it. And in a pressure situation, where
those are founded on principles. Like, so you get the idea or the philosophy, if you will, of a scheme of a defense or the philosophy of an offense. And so when you understand those philosophies and those schemes, then you can go, well, I can memorize a playbook this thick because I have the foundations first, and then I can apply the transformations up here.
Yeah, yeah, it's exact same concept. So very similar. And so, yeah, I mean,
No,
great.
I like learning, so I repeat sometimes almost what blatantly what you already said, and I because I'm a dummy and I have to then layman terms it more for me to where I go, what you say that's layman. Now let me reconstruct it the way I understand it, see if I get confirmation, and then I can better assimilate it.
Yeah, no, and that's perfect, and that's, a great learning method.
Yeah,
Um,
right. I keep checking out all over the board today, man.
great.
So
So,
you've just been so this wow, I mean, there's so many avenues you leave me to start with, man, by traveling the world and helping people to learning these different ideas to tourism security specialist. I mean, this is fascinating to me, and as I'm sure, and I know a lot of people have questions. What do they what do they question you least about?
well, actually, I guess the least about is the first responder stuff, and maybe it's because I don't talk about it that much. I mean, this is kind of rare for me to actually uh, put out the first responder kind of material because most people cannot apply a lot of those stories to their daily lives, as opposed to say, how do you travel the world, or
Another book that's been struggling to do that for a while,
yeah,
the
well,
Bible.
yeah, yeah,
I mean, it's been telling stories, right? The metaphoric stories that,
right,
and
right.
people have difficulty in applying those, right? So that's
Voice. Yeah, yeah, they do. I mean, a lot of times it takes interpretation, right? And so, in order for you to apply the
oh,
specific, because there is spiritual decision making, and a lot of people, in fact, it does dovetail into emergency response, very much so. In that, for instance, in the Philippines, how do people determine when they should evacuate their home as a typhoon is coming in? Or the same exact volcano I went to in Manizales had killed, I can't remember if it was 18,000 people in the 1980s. I might have those numbers off, but it was thousands of people wiped out the town of Armero. And
when once and forever, and that's it. You move once and forever.
right.
I know everybody can't, man. I'm just being stupid.
No, but how did these people decide that they should stay
Yeah,
or they should leave with this bubbling volcano, or the same thing with the typhoon? And the fact is, we kind of, especially in the first responder community, well, we think, well, no, they seek the guidance of the local government and the newscasts and the warnings and the weather reports, and nowadays you have apps and so forth, right? But that's not actually how they're making those decisions. They seek spiritual guidance. They ask their local priest, should we or should we not leave? And
wow, what a different schema to approach it as a life. Well, I mean, in some basis, we do that in our culture with religious areas too, right? We pray over operations, pray over career choices. People do that in a similar fashion. So some people listening to this may have this cognitive dissonance hearing this going, how can you dare ask a priest and not a weatherman whether you should get away from the typhoon or not? But if people could pause long enough to kind of go, well, do you do that about your job, your career, a marriage? You know what I mean? Do you ask for guidance of whether you should divorce or not? I mean, it's not, I don't see a big difference really between the two choices.
yeah, I mean, it goes to what source do you trust? And
We're back at the belief again.
right, and especially in certain countries, they have a big distrust of the government. So if the government tells you to evacuate, no way. I mean, you don't trust that particular source. In other words, you don't believe in that particular source of information, and in some cases, rightfully so. So once again, it goes to, you trust your neighbors. Are you leaving? No, I'm not leaving if you're not leaving. And then you go to, there's the spiritual decision maker and the spiritual leader, or the community leader. It doesn't necessarily have to be spiritual, but people often do not rely upon government sources. So, yeah, I mean, and so, and it's just another way of looking at things.
Yeah, sure. And I'd like to see some statistics on some of the advice that, when the priest said yes and the weatherman said yes and the government said no, and just to, man, I think I'm a social scientist at heart, man, and I've just yet to go get my PhD in it. 'Cause I want to do all kind of social experiments to see reactions, and it's I I I like the first responder, and you said you haven't talked much about it, and perhaps I'm just a competence, but also a story junkie. And I like hearing stories. I like hearing because there's like you said, there's so much to be learned from people's perceptions of their experiences. And
Right, right.
you know, for me, I just feel like I've got to know you so much quicker by hearing the stories of the first responders, and how that has really pushed you forward in this passion. But because it seems like what you do is try to teach things to people and governments and counties, whatever, and companies. You try to teach them things so first responders don't have to happen
Well, right. I mean, it's
or reduced. You know what I mean? Like
I
you're,
mean,
yeah.
obviously, the ultimate goal is to, make better communities, to save lives. And so, one of the things I was fortunate enough to do, and it was just, once again, it's one of those preparation meets opportunity meets coincidence, is in 2012, I actually got to participate as an observer in a tsunami drill, a tsunami simulation in Manta, Ecuador. And I got to see how they make decisions. So a lot of times it's not about me teaching. A lot of times it's about me learning. And then I pass along that knowledge when I go to the next location. And I learned a lot of stuff in Ecuador regarding how they perceive the appropriate ways to respond to, say, a tsunami. And there are differences. So anyway, yeah, I mean, I'm always learning as well. And in fact, it's part of my.
I have your see what I try to do when I deconstruct people that are up here, dropping their life stories. I try to put it all together and try to work out as fast as I can in the podcast how they do it. What's your
What
belief?
you're actually doing there is you're doing what's called concept mapping. It's actually, it can be taught, and it's one of the courses I've been thinking about putting up next.
You want to do it?
Yeah, I mean, it's also known by cognitive mapping, brain mapping. I like to call it concept mapping because I don't think it always has to do.
How about competence mapping? And we'll do
Hey,
it,
that's
we'll
a good
do it
one
together.
too, right? Because what are you trying to do? You're trying to basically, your mind has a certain load. It's cognitive load theory, right? You can hold 7 plus or minus 2 basic chunks of information, and so your mind, as it fills up, you're trying to free up some of that cognitive load. So you throw it down on that piece of paper, and you're kind of doodling.
I do this all the time, man. Does this mean I have no free space in my cloud? I mean, I have to purchase more or something. Because I'm always writing, so I'm at my max. I gotta upgrade
Yeah, well, yeah. If we only could, right? If the
one
human
day.
mind had the capacity to just
One day,
yeah, one day, right? We'll be able to 14 different concepts, right?
add some gigs to this motherfucker.
Right, exactly. Oh, I don't need a concept map. I got 32 gigs of, I can keep it all right up here.
Yeah,
So,
no more Dunbar number or nothing.
but just that technique is such an effective technique that most people don't know about. And so that's kind of like one of the things that I offer. That's one of the things I provide, because I know, just like you, like, really get into your podcast, I got to say, I'm a little bit of a geek when it comes to like concept mapping, and teaching people these decision tools.
Can I tell you what I figured you out? I'm gonna
Okay.
read what I got for you.
Yeah. Come on, read it back.
Well, and we just hit an hour in, so this would have been one session of mental training with Adam. So at the end of it, what I've circled back to try to expose that, right, that framework of some kind, is by traveling different cultures through one experience, you expose the passion in which you followed to learn the cultural psychology of other people and other cultures to help navigate beliefs around the world for making choices. But all of this is rooted in your philosophy of helping others with preparation through learning to really help people. And that comes from your first responder experiences, which are the most influential experiences in what you do in the now.
Right. I mean, definitely that's a foundation, right? I mean, that is the fun.
It's only been an hour, bro. Give me some time.
Well, at a fundamental level, what, for me, I'm not seeking material, right? I that's just not my drive. I'm not seeking status. Now you could say, well, okay, but you you went off and got a Ph.D. and that has some associated status with it. But that wasn't my intent. That wasn't my purpose. Because I'm just, I love, educational psychology. It's all about how do you know what you know, what's the truth. And there's so many different ways out there to determine the truth, and then take that truth and break it down to where you can apply it to your life. And that's what I liked about your book. I mean, when I read your book, I was like, there are so many different ways out there to look at life and to determine what is the truth, what is it that you know, and then break it down into an applied day-to-day routine. And you've got that. You've got that you start off big picture. And yeah, don't tear up on me now. You start off big picture, and then first you relay your story. You've got a great story, right? And then I like the way you talk about your mentors and who's influenced you, because that way people kind of grasp that, you're not just coming up with this, half-cocked, idea that you just threw together. No, you've spent a lot of time researching. You've spent a lot of time thinking about different ways that you can improve your own life. And so you came up with, hey, let me restructure my beliefs. Let me develop my life plan. And how can I turn that into a healthy daily routine, right? And it's all packed into your book. And, it took me 2 days a day and a half to read your book between other things I was doing. Because your book, it's got a lot of substance to it. So going through and flipping through there and trying to decipher and take out those nuggets that I can use. Because another thing I like about your book is it's not about saying, okay, this is the only way to do it. It's, hey, take what works and build on it. So you're kind of almost offering a recipe. And you know how when you offer a recipe to someone else, eventually they'll put their own little ingredients into it. Yeah. Well, that's the way I see your book, right? You're throwing out a great recipe, and there's different ways of looking at it, and maybe someone else wants to add a little bit to that recipe and make it work for them. And even for you, this is what I would advise, or I see, and I think you're already going to do this yourself, because of this, it's going to be a natural progression, is that you're going to have Cognitive Rampage 2.0, 3.0, because as your life changes, you might add tool number 4, right? Or you might tweak tool number 3 based on something that happens in your life. Or you might say, hey, look, use tool number 2 if you're at this stage in your life. But when you get to, you need to use tool number 2.2 if you've advanced to this, or you've not necessarily advanced, that's not the right word, because, but if you encounter a different environment. So anyway, just different things that I think will be the natural progression for Cognitive Rampage, because our life plans and our decision-making frameworks, they change over time. They change over time based on our circumstances, based on what's going on. And like in your book, you say, man, if it's not working for you, then probably you're using old tools. You're probably using old beliefs, and you're trying to apply them to your new situation. And
can I hire you as a spokesperson?
Oh yeah, that was a great plug for your book right there, right?
Wow. Well, do I have permission to use that, chopped up in different variations on YouTube without copyright infringement?
Yeah, sure. Have at it.
All right.
Yeah, I'm just speaking from the heart, and I think that's what is. And of course, I'm not just speaking from the heart. I'm speaking from my decades worth of experience studying decision making, studying different decision making frameworks.
Well, you do the same. That's what I'm seeing here, man, is you found your way, and your way is taking what you see as different avenues for everyone to make decisions and choices, and bringing those into one place, and to say, here's how they do it, this do it, here's a way. You're part of that answer, is providing, here's other paths, here's other people's ways, here's what I suggest, here's what I pull, and pushing that out there, man. I love this, man. Like it's so, how do you not, wow, that's probably the wrong question. How do you continue to progress to new beliefs and move yourself forward and stay aware of what your current beliefs may be, from from being in different countries, different places. How do you, how do you make sure your biases and negative, beliefs don't impact what you're doing each day as you travel so much?
Yeah, well, I mean, one thing is, I mean, I've got my daily routine, right? And part of my daily routine is, I mean, just always learning. I mean, I'm always reading a new book. I'm always, and not just always about decision making. I mean, I try to read books along multiple domains, multiple areas, so that, and in fact, there's a good book by Gary Klein. I'm sorry, Gary Klein, Sources of Power, and it's all about gaining insights. So when you talk about gaining insights, that's really about how do you modify your beliefs. And he's got this great story in there about this firefighter, first responder, David Dodge. He was fighting a mountain fire. He was a smoke jumper, right? So he and one other guy, I believe it was one other guy, or he might have been the sole survivor. I can't remember all the details to the story. But basically, they jumped into a fire. There were 12 or 13 of them, and the fire turned on them. And the other firefighters tried to climb up the mountain and evade the fire. And David Dodge, for no, we can't figure out exactly the reason why he did this, but he stopped. And he turned around and started lighting the grass on fire around him. And this is back in the 1950s. And that technique had never been done before. And so what he did is he actually burned the fuel away around him. And then he dove into the ashes of what he had burned away. And as the fire came through, he survived. And the other firefighters perished.
Holy shit. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's an incredible story, right? Because what Gary Klein in his book Sources of Power is trying to get at is, how did he come up with this on the spur of the moment? Here he is under pressure. And this technique had never really been invented or tried before. And this is in the 50s. And he had to instantly change all of his, not change his beliefs, but he had to question his beliefs. What does he believe? And the way Gary Klein explains it is he had to question his anchors, things that he knew to be true, such as he knew to be true that he couldn't climb to the top of the mountain. Well, he had to question that. Can I make it? And then eventually he tried something innovative. And so one of the ways Gary Klein talks about it is you want to always challenge your current beliefs, right? Don't accept what your current truth is. That's one thing. But another,
I should have cited Gary Klein in my book, man.
yeah, I mean, he's one of my mentors. So
I feel bad. I'm like, man, I should have cited this dude, because I did quote, I used Bruce Lipton, The Biology of Belief. He uses that example in his book, or in a paraphrase, actually, I heard, where, lifting up a car, the mother's lifted up a car to save her child. Before, we call it adrenaline, sure, but I don't turn into the Hulk just because my adrenaline rushes. So for a second, did you think that she didn't think she couldn't pick up the car?
wow.
And so for that moment, for him in that fire, for that moment, was it a belief that, I can't die, or, to challenge everything, like you said?
Right. Well, and to somehow flip it to a novel solution. And that's really the key, is how are these people, especially under pressure, coming up with novel solutions? And another way in this book, he doesn't just talk about David Dodge. He talks about a lot of different case studies. General Custer, for example, or no, that's a different book. I'm sorry. Processing Under Pressure. Totally different book. But he talks about...
I think Buddy failed at his choice. I think Buddy and the Little Bighorn failed at his decision-making in pressure situations.
Well, exactly. And they, in Processing Under Pressure, once again, different book, not Gary Klein. I can't remember the author, but they talk about how you get that tunnel vision and how you see what you want to see. And they basically, because people, they can't understand why somebody would make the poor decisions that a General Custer would make. But explained through a different framework, you start to see how General Custer had these beliefs that he wasn't willing to challenge.
Arrogant motherfucker.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it was to do with that, right? And so, and then of course we all know the end result. But yeah, I mean, that's as well. But going back to your question about, what do I do? One of the things in Gary Klein's book is also about connections, making connections, which means getting out of your comfort zone, trying something new, so that then you bring that back into the fold, into your wheelhouse, and you can better develop novel solutions. And so that's what I'm always trying to do. I think that's part of traveling, is you're always kind of testing your comfort zone a little bit, and experiencing something new. And I think we all do that. I mean, not everybody. I mean, I think a lot of people do struggle with getting out of their comfort zone. And I mean, I think, once again, not to keep beating you up and going back to your book, but I think you do a good job of explaining how to, you need to break out of that comfort zone. You need to just say, screw it, and go on your rampage, right?
Yeah, man. Yeah, you do. And that's the hardest part, I think, is for us to do that. I talk to people sometimes and say, look, why don't you just dye your hair a different color, or just shave this off and do that? And people go, what? Are you kidding? I'm like, well, you're not even willing to do that, or try on a pair of Dockers, just cause, you know what I mean? And they'll, no, well, you're not even willing to do that, but you want to change your whole life. Well, you wonder why you keep failing over and over. I mean, you can't change the smallest thing, right? And we allow those concrete beliefs to define us.
Right.
I mean, so for you, what beliefs would you say define you?
Oh, I mean, that's a tough question.
We got 2 hours. Well, yeah, almost 2 hours.
Yeah, I'd really have to delve in and think about that. But I mean, if it's a belief, I believe in that the purpose of life is to help other people in whatever shape or form. So I mean, I think that's a fundamental belief that I have, because if obviously I'm going to die, we all die, and I don't really. So what? I don't care if I'm not here. I mean, that's neither here nor there, but helping other people. And it's like, I can't remember, you said this at the beginning of the broadcast, but it's what we leave behind, and so that's kind of one reason I transitioned from law enforcement, because I really appreciated the fact that every day I was kind of maybe making just a little difference in a handful of lives. And sometimes I'd make a major difference in one person's life, but at the same time, it was a little bit limited, as opposed to now, where when I talk to somebody like you, and I can work with communities and impact hundreds or thousands of lives potentially. So and my long-term vision, my longer-term goals, is really to grow that. And once again, we go back to better decisions, better lives, better communities. And so basically, if I can teach Adam a few of my tools, if I can teach you how, you're already doing it, but concept mapping, right? If I can teach you how to, be a little bit more efficient with the concept mapping, or, what will that add to your life that then you translate?
You already have.
Right. But yeah, I mean, and so, and that's where I wake up every day. And if you want to talk about my daily routine, I mean, I wake up usually right around as the sun comes up, sometimes a little earlier. And then I, go do my little fitness routine. That doesn't take me that long. I take a shower, get cleaned up, and then I head down to a coffee shop that has Wi-Fi, because that's my office, right? I pack up my office. My office is in just this little backpack, MacBook, iPad, iPhone, right? So on the way, I'll stop by my mango guy or my mango lady, I'll grab myself a piece of fruit. And then I go into the coffee shop, have myself a cup of coffee, do my work, chat with a few people. And then when I'm done working for the day, go back up, take myself a little siesta, in my apartment. I usually rent a furnished apartment in my travels, but not always. I've stayed in a hostel one time for 3 months. I stayed in a hotel one time in India for 3 months. But generally speaking, I rent myself a furnished apartment. And then after I'm done with my siesta, I go out and I enjoy whatever the local culture has to offer. I talk to people, see what they're up to. I make some friends. And, if I'm staying in a place for 3 months, eventually they start, asking me if I want to go do this or that. And every place is different. So like in Medellin, did a little parapente action. I met the brother of Pablo Escobar. He's Roberto Escobar. He did 11 years behind jail, and now he kind of offers tours.
Yeah, I think our earlier, I didn't say anything. Note to self, I didn't say anything. I think the alleged implications of you being, or the alleged ideas of you being implicated in some federal something around the world is now being confirmed on our back end research here, sir.
Yeah, all these, right. I'm now associating with known criminals, right? Yeah, you got me, right?
You are on the TCR podcast.
So, yeah, I met Roberto Escobar. That was great. And then when I went to Manizales, one girl actually asked me, she says, "You're always working, She says, "What do you do for fun?" And because all she saw of me was I come into the coffee shop every day and I'm sitting there and I'm just hammering away, and she thinks it's work, right? But I have fun with what I do. So
I was talking last night actually at a mental training group I was running, these free groups I do, and how entrepreneurs, when it's really, that's the new starving artist these days, because a lot of people think you're going to start your own business and be free, and it's not true. You actually work 24/7, which is why you have to do what you love as an entrepreneur. So your life, therefore, is fun. And what you're doing 24/7, yeah, it's work, but it's fun. So a lot of people have that misconstrued, that I'm going to start my own business. I have 2 days off a week and I'll work 5 days. No, your wife will hate you, because all you'll do is talk about your ideas, your theories, what you're thinking about in 3 years. You're endless. I destroy my wife's ears, and she has to hear all the plans but we have to move that way, right?
Yeah, I completely,
I guess I'm irrational to say we have to move that way. We choose to move that way for some reward.
Yeah, it's I'm not going to say, I'm trying to see how to phrase this. It's not a matter of agreement as necessarily. It's a matter of just, you find yourself always, if you enjoy what you're doing, it's just becomes what you do, right? So you're 24/7, other than when you're actually sleeping, it's constantly invading your mind in a way,
my friends get annoyed with me, and they joke, my close friends in high school, shout out to Juan Hernandez and Mike Rommel, but they like to mess with me because they'll send me little spoof videos that I do, and they'll hold up their phone and talk to it all serious, reflective, and go, I was thinking about life today, and I was going to do a video. And so they'll send it to me randomly, don't take yourself so serious. They joke around, but I'm like, guys, and sometimes I stop mid-conversation with new people and friends and go, wait, let's record this. And they look at me like, does everything have to be a podcast? And I'm like, well, I think, this is what I want to do. So you're right. And my friends get annoyed sometimes, and they joke with me like, hey, you want to do another podcast or hang out? You know what I mean?
Right. And even when you're hanging out sometimes, and it's a skill, you have to sometimes focus and shut it off, right?
I think I've just full on accepted it and have told my friends that, look, I can't turn off that I have a counselor background. I can't turn off that I like to poke people's concrete beliefs to see if I can learn something. And people just take me wrong a lot of times, but I poke at people with their concrete beliefs because it's something they really know. And I can get some knowledge out of that. So when I poke at it, it feels like I'm being, attacking. And what I'm doing is going, and eventually I'll go, wow, I get that. That's awesome. And I'm like, all right, I really get that. I'll turn it any second, but you're right. I don't know. I can't turn it off. I like it too much. I love discovering new things. Like you said, I'm addicted to competence, Dr. Richard. And what's my prescription? South America?
That's a tough one, because once you get addicted, it's really hard to just shut it off. And because even at this point, even if the prescription that I wrote you was to just like isolate yourself away from new knowledge, right, to kind of shut down that path, In other words, kind of wean you off of the search for competence, that would be extremely hard for you to do. And, why would you do that? Because, if something, it'd be like me saying, don't eat apples anymore, right? If it's healthy for you, why would you stop doing it? But obviously there is a balance, seeking competence 24/7. Sometimes you might just need to sit back and enjoy what you have. And that's where this girl that was asking me, what do you do for fun? And because you're always working. And, what was funny about it is right then we were standing outside and I was looking across her shoulder and there's this volcano erupting. And, to her, this is, oh, well, I've lived here all my life. I've seen that volcano, right? But for me, I'm like, what do you mean? What do I do for fun? There's a volcano erupting, And
Yeah.
so, that's typically how I spend my day. It's typically how I spend my day. You asked me about my beliefs, and one of the core beliefs is, helping others. And then I think a second core belief I hold, and this one I learned from my dad. He always just said, do the right thing. And, it's a very simple phrase. I know that's very subjective. I know there's a lot of, but it's almost like, in our hearts, we know what it is, the right thing to do, right? And so as long as you, in good faith, do the right thing, it's almost like the Good Samaritan Act, right?
Like intentions.
Yeah, it's like intentions. That's why the Good Samaritan law is there. You don't, you tried to give the person CPR, you tried to do the right thing. And so you can't be sued for the Good Samaritan. And so to me, I kind of see, just do the right thing. And
I've been writing down because you read the book. I can talk with you freely like that. So the belief of self and others, what would you say you believe about the world?
Believing about the world. Well, I think in general, that, people are good, people are kind-hearted. Most people want the same thing, and that continues to get reinforced to me. When I've got students from 163 countries, and every single one of them seems to have kind of the similar aspirations in life, the similar goals. They want better for their families. They want better for themselves. They want better for the world. So I think, what I believe, with 163 countries encompasses a lot of land. And so I would say what I believe about the world is that, while people might have different decision-making frameworks, and they might approach things from different perspectives or different beliefs, fundamentally, they all kind of want to get to the top of the mountain, right? They want to enjoy their journey. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, what I believe about the world. And the...
I had fun. Forgive me. Yeah. All I did was apply the life philosophy and the self, others, and the world beliefs, RSA'd the things.
Right.
There's a minor reframing that I see maybe, but can I read to you your basic philosophy and you tell me if it sounds like good advice?
Sure.
All right. Remember, people are good. Remember, help others. And remember, do the right thing because we all want to enjoy our journey.
Yeah, that's right. That sums it up. It's simple, right? That's another one of my beliefs, by the way. One of my core beliefs is simplicity. We
would simply just add, because we all want to enjoy the journey. It's that simple.
I like that. That sounds good. It's that simple.
Now with that, we have revealed the beginning of your life philosophy, Dr. Richard.
There you go. Hey, great, man. You need to send that to me so I can bottle it up and
you can reveal it right there with the book that you read.
Yeah, that's right. So that's great. That's really good.
But that's what I get. I see. For me, that's the gift, right? I'm doing that's the competence I get. So for me, when I ask you, what is Dr. Richard Feenstra's philosophy? For me, when I write that down, I go, man, I would add this to my philosophy, and which I will, and, and incorporate it. So that's why I asked this question to everybody that comes on. And now I think this is really the first time I've ever tried to cultivate it on my own from them. I've never tried that before.
Yeah. So great, man. You did something, learned something new, right? Not learned something new, but tried something new.
Well, yeah, especially with a guy like smarter than me to try to deconstruct what his philosophy is and write it down and read it out to think I'm right. I mean, literally, you could go, yeah, no, not even close. And then totally my book is just a sham. And so like right here, I was like, okay, I'm going to read it, man, please.
Right. But what's great about it is a great example of what you can do with your book, especially after, because you know your book inside and out, right? So you know your tools, you've used your tools. So, but it shows what the audience can do, what your audience can do if they apply your tools. It might take them a little while because, the first time you use a hammer, you might not, I know, I never hit the nail at the first time, right? But it shows over time if you continue to use those tools. You put that together in what, a 20-minute conversation. I know we've been conversing for a while now, but just that.
No, literally, when you started out and I asked you what your beliefs were, I wrote self, others, and the world. And then you started talking about, well, I believe in helping others. And that answered what you believed about others. And then you talked about do the right thing. And that came from your mentor and your family member. So that had to be self. And then that's why the only thing I had left to ask you is what's your belief about the world? And then really that gave me everything else.
Yeah. See, there you go. And that's the first 3 of your life plan. Yeah, right. Exactly.
That's 5 minutes, man. And I'm not smart at all. And
you're smart enough to, put the.
Well, you're well diverse, and so to take something with the experience, the knowledge, the stuff that you have, and extract something so simple like that, for me, man, I'm like, wow. Like,
yeah. Well, I will admit I do have a diverse experience as far as with the travels, and I've ever since I was actually born in South Carolina, and every 2 years I was moving. So. My dad was in the military. So, I've constantly kind of been on the go. I've lived a traveling lifestyle pretty much all my life, with the exception of when I put some time down to be a police officer and live in Las Vegas. So
no desire, marriage, kids, just no.
Well, once again, preparation meets the opportunity, and we don't necessarily define our purpose, right? But the idea is that I'm open to it. But she needs to be willing to travel,
Hold on. So if I could create your dating profile here, it would say global traveler, Renaissance man with somehow access to political avenues and parties in multiple Central American countries, who travels the world helping people while making a living, helping people make decisions online. And you get to have coffee in Colombia, riots in Colombia, and assassinations in Ecuador. Listen, I think you're done. That dating profile, that's a wrap, my friend.
Yeah, and that's really not very appealing to a lot of women, So
no, not the right women. Not the right women.
Not the right women, right?
But I can tell you that if you've looked at online dating, every first sentence is, "I like to travel."
Yeah. There's a difference between liking to travel and long walks on the beach and a traveling lifestyle.
What are those biggest differences, man? What are the downfalls, the splits? What are those differences?
I'm sorry, could you clarify?
Well, what you're talking about is there are downfalls, differences than, of a living the traveling lifestyle versus the idea of traveling.
Yeah. Well, the downside is, obviously when it comes to those personal relationships, that, I think you cover this also well in your book about how most people are brought up into a society where, it's expected that, you get married, have the kids, have the white picket fence, have the minivan, take the kids to soccer, build have a starter home, then you upgrade to a bigger home, and, then eventually, and that's a accepted lifestyle, right? And so for me to find, say, a travel companion that, shares more my vision of the world and says, hey, why not, especially nowadays with, say, online learning, right? Why not, we'll have kids on the go, right? I mean,
dude, there's actually a major trend in that, man. You're seeing a lot of higher socioeconomic families doing so, that are actually doing homeschooling, preferring homeschooling, and many have taken to traveling the world and doing so, doing cultural immersion, social immersion the same way. Too much research is pointing to the idea of wanting to self-learn as a kid, and if provided the right environments, they will follow those passions. They will want to self-learn.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a huge benefit. In fact, research shows that learning multiple languages, it enhances creativity. It enhances your capacity for critical thinking skills, and then of course being exposed to different cultures. That's another advantage. An advantage of living the nomadic / digital nomad lifestyle. But we're talking about, what are some of the downfalls, and some of the downfalls are, there is that. I don't see it as a downfall. I don't see it as a negative, but this idea that you lack stability,
And what is that really? I mean, I heard Steve Maxwell, the trainer, old school guy, man. I mean, he's awesome. He said, he was on, I think he was on either Fighter and the Kid podcast or Joe Rogan podcast, either one, but he says it a lot. The day he lives out of this backpack, that's what he does, and travels like you,
right.
And giving seminars, traveling, giving fitness seminars, jiu-jitsu lessons, etc. And, he goes, I spent my lifetime gathering stuff, and the day I put all my stuff down and let it go was the most liberating day of my life, he says. And I typically like to listen to those much older than me, because I think they're closer to a place, an end, naturally,
Right.
and the importance of things reshuffle. So when I hear a man like that, who's been successful, who could have the home, the ranch, even, could do something, decided to walk.
Yeah. I mean, exactly. I mean, it's not about like all of my. One of the things about giving up the material approach is you're not really giving up any of the comforts of the material approach. I mean, basically, I'm living in furnished apartments, right? And the places I choose, I mean, it's great. Taxi cabs cost $1, $2 to get somewhere, or you have the public transportation system, or just the way they design their communities down in South America. I mean, you just walk right down. You're into the city park, the central square, and there's restaurants all over the place. So you kind of pick your places that you're going, based on your life design, based on your approach, based on your life plan, right? Yeah. So this idea of, but going back to this idea of simplicity, and your friend that said, hey, this is the most liberating thing. Well, there's a reason it's liberating. And it's just like me.
I wish he was my friend. No, Steve Maxwell is not my friend. He's just a guy, and a virtual guy.
Okay. Well, regardless, his concept is similar in that every day when you wake up, there's a Roy Baumeister, and he specializes in ego depletion. And ego depletion is a fancy way of just saying willpower, right? And they've done plenty of studies that show that, the more decisions you make and the more you tax your mind, the sooner your ego, your willpower will fade over the day. So if, for instance, you sit there and you maintain your diet all day long, you might maintain your diet all day long, but then your willpower is depleted by the end of the day, and you make a bad decision because you just can't restrain yourself from some other addiction. So you go gamble, or you go have a beer, or you.
What's the name of that book, man? I think I'm ordering that ASAP.
Geez,
you said Roy
Baumeister. He's written a lot of different books. I wish I could give you a title of one of his books, but I will give you one of his experiments that was classic experiment, one that he's really famous for. Yeah. Is because it showed how simple how we get taxed. And actually, there's two experiments. One was where they just had people hold information in their head, or they had them do a cognitive task. And then after the cognitive task was over, they had him walk down a hallway. They thought the experiment was over. They said, oh, thank you for your time. Thank you for participating in our experiment. You walk down the hallway. And at the end of the hallway, it looked like there was like maybe an office party going on. And they would reach a point where they'd say, do you want, hey, thanks for participating in the experiment. Would you like a fruit cup or would you like a piece of chocolate cake? And the people that had been assigned a more heavy cognitive task were more likely to pick the chocolate cake versus the fruit cup.
Oh my God, no kidding.
Yeah, so it's one of his classic.
Yeah, what's the name of that study?
And once again, I wish I could
find it. We'll find it. Don't worry. Hey, unless you got some CIA buddies you can contact real quick.
Yeah, let me see if I can. Well, they're listening in, so they'll get that too. Yeah,
that's true. Hey, if you guys would somehow find a way to send me that information you've recorded here.
Okay.
I was talking to NSA and everyone else that's
everybody else. All right.
Yeah.
And his second experiment showed that if you could recover some of your willpower, if you were just to eat a little sugar, and you didn't actually have to eat the sugar, you could actually just put the sugar under your tongue for a little bit, and you didn't actually have to swallow it, and it would recharge your willpower a little bit. Your ego.
I got to know how he measured the willpower.
Once again, I'm because ego depletion. People are, he's not really talking about willpower in the common sense. He really refers to it as ego depletion. So when you look at his studies, you look into how he defines ego depletion.
Yeah, I will. I'll start there. Dude, this is great. I love the book, man. Yeah, I definitely see the TCR Cognitive Rampage 2.0 after I've read Gary and some of these other guys. And now, working with Dr. Bobby Hoffman, you and I, which will be doing that coming out. I won't put much out there, but, wow. I look forward to TCR 2.0 or whatever that is.
Yeah, I do too. I think it's going to be great. I mean, it's going to be we'll keep going with it, right? 2.0, 2.1. Yeah. So, I look forward to a long and healthy relationship here.
Well, I think I'm just putting it out there, and I'm willing to help you do this as you've been helping me on the back end with some things. Is I think that you need a podcast, sir. And I think you need to call the podcast Digital Nomad, and you need to let us produce this for you.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, I'd be very receptive to that. We'll have to, once we go offline, let's talk more about that. That's a great idea. This is one of the things is I've thought about podcasts. I've thought about other ways of delivering content. And so, yeah, that's a great idea.
I'd love to do that with you, man. I mean, we're going to be working together here for, I don't know, a couple months. I don't know how long this project with Dr. Bobby Hoffman is going to take, but that's another book that people should also go purchase now on Amazon is Motivation for Performance and Learning.
Well, right. Actually, I'll tell you right now, if they purchase the online course through me and through using the Rampage coupon, the book is thrown in for free, an electronic version of Bob's book.
Wow, I'm reading it right now. It is, I like to call it a detailed playbook of motivation, learning, and performance.
Right. It really is. I mean, he goes in depth and he talks to some really interesting people in that. I mean, so for instance, he talks to Bernie Madoff and, what was behind his motivation. But one of the ones that I really like in his book is Nick Lowery. And Nick Lowery.
Guy too. I'm biased, obviously.
Oh, yeah. Of course, you would love Nick Lowery, right? I mean, and for anybody that doesn't know, he was like the number one field goal kicker as far as percentage complete. Is that right?
For a long time, he held a lot of records. I think most of his have been broken by now, but I think he owned a lot. And my mom was a Chief fan. I'm a New York Giants fan, but every time Nick Lowery was kicking, I couldn't help but feel a little proud and think I was connected.
Yeah, I mean that's great. I mean, and Bob had interviewed him, and he gives some really good knowledge, that about how he stayed so focused. I mean, you've got to look at his world where he's got thousands of people screaming at him, and he's got adrenaline, pumping through his body as he goes and steps out on that, and he's got to make the winning field goal or whatever. And he just goes in the book, he describes kind of step by step how he filtered and just stayed focused on execution of his plan. And, you can take that microcosm and you can apply it to your life. It's a sports metaphor, but at the same time, it really helps me when it comes to doing what I try to do, staying focused and, shifting my focus from long-term to short-term. And one way I do that is actually once a week. I actually call it planning Sundays. I actually plan out my week, right? And it takes me about half an hour, figure out exactly what my targets are for the week. What are my meetings coming up? What type of things I need to hit. And so I'm kind of almost relaxing on Sunday, and it's like me looking at the top of my mountain. What's my big picture goals? What's my long-term goals? And I also reflect on, what did I accomplish last week? And I reflect on the past. But when Monday hits, you know what? The past is gone. You can't dwell on the past. You can't be nostalgic. You can't, and the future hasn't come yet, right? So I narrow in on that 1 week window and I just focus. And I kind of just, I stay in the moment as much as possible during the week. And then when Sunday comes around, I kind of relax back and I allow myself to, once again, kind of think about my longer term picture and, reflect on my past. And that way it helps me during the week to just stay more narrowed in on what I'm trying to accomplish now, today. What am I going to do good today? What's the next brick that I'm going to lay on my bridge today? That's kind of my, my routine, or you could say part of my life philosophy. So
yeah, I think it's added, man. I'm with you, man. When I'm nodding, you were going off in your rampage there, so I was just listening, going, yeah, man.
Yeah, and it's just, I'm offering the audience kind of, my method for how I design my week, how I plan my week, and how I stop from losing focus throughout the week.
You seem like you're in a constant state of analysis and not judgment. A lot of times we like to say, this is who I am, right? Or I figured it out, but it seems like you reflect a lot. Like you're always just kind of analyze, not always, it's irrational, but, in a state, or you find structured times to reflect and analyze.
Right. I'm very, it's basically Sundays. Sundays is my day to kind of kick back, relax, and indulge in, the big dreams of, conquering the world or whatever, the plan may be. It's some days where, you sit there and you dream about, getting on top of the next mountain, and, what's going to look like, your vision, so I can envision myself, standing on top of this mountain and looking out over this great valley, or I can envision when I go down to Ecuador, helping rebuild these homes or whatever, so I have these visions. But you know what, come Monday, I need to shift focus because it doesn't do you any good to be, dreaming or envisioning so far off when really I need to be focused on my next step, my next path. So if you think about it from a hiking up the mountain perspective, right? You sit down and you stare at the top of the mountain and you go, wow, this is so great. But you're never going to get to the top of the mountain if you don't start walking, right? And now when you walk, do you walk constantly staring at the top of the mountain? No, you look at your feet, right? Or you look just barely up ahead to the next, the next rock where you're going to take your next break. And if conditions are really bad and maybe you encounter some rain that you didn't expect or whatever, well, what do? Then you really are focusing just on making those next couple steps. And that big picture mountain just goes out the window. You're not reflecting on that and you're not thinking about that. You're focused. And so I kind of look at my weeks as, that's my next leg of the journey. That's my next, I look up the trail on Sunday. I look up at the top of my mountain and I go, yeah, that's going to be great view when I get there, right? And then I kind of take a little time to look at how far next week can I make it? Can I make it 200 more meters up the mountain? And I pick a point, right? I pick a rock or a tree. And in my case, it's, can I get a video done? Can I reach out to Adam and get this done or that done? What am I, how far more up the trail am I going to get? Can I reach out to my buddy in Ecuador? And then when Monday rolls around, I don't think about the top of the mountain. All I focus on is that next leg of my journey. And that works for me. Maybe it works for you. Maybe it works for some of your audience members, and maybe it doesn't. But I thought I'd just offer that,
I think it's brilliant. If I can't turn the camera far enough, but I'm still as ancient as I'm a whiteboard guy. Is I process like John Nash in A Beautiful Mind on the whiteboard out. I have a calendar that I use. I know they make paper ones and they make a digital one. I know, but I still like my whiteboard where I work it. Even when I do groups and when I'm working, my craft, I'm in it, man. I'm not sitting down reading a handout. I'm working it. And for me, I love writing it out, and I do the same. And it's weird you say that because I've had to make some adjustments. And so now my board is 2 days late from me sitting down and do the redesign now. And so that day is upon me today. And
right. So you have your process, right? I mean, right. Yeah.
Well, that's what I wanted, man, is pulling that out, telling people what you do, how you do it. And, that's, a lot. That's good advice for those people that are in there living that life, that have already decided to follow that passion. What would you tell to that person, though, that is 10, 11 years into one city, one career, is looking, I got 30, 20 more years down the road before this ends and thinks there could be new. What would you tell to that person? Where to go, what to think, what would you tell them?
Well, I mean, it would just be a matter of, obviously, if depending on their circumstances, right? I mean, they've been in it now. Obviously, for me, one of the big things is I would first look at their life and see how they could simplify their life. I mean, I would just advise them, let's get at once again, let's get at your core beliefs. And let's get at where do you want to be in, say 3 years. And, and that's another actual technique I use. It's the 3-year narrative. And, every 3 months I rewrite my 3-year narrative. Now, it doesn't get actually rewritten from scratch. It's a rolling 3-year plan. And so I actually type it out in several paragraphs, kind of, where I want to be, what I want to be doing. And the first time you write it, it takes a while, because the very, very first time you do a 3-year narrative, you want to put as much detail as possible. You want to be, what type of car am I driving? What type of clothes am I wearing? What's my day look like? What's my week look like? And basically what you're doing is you're creating a vision of that's going to help guide your decisions, right? And so anybody that was struggling, say they'd been in a place for 10, 11 years and they were looking at working for many, many more years, I would just say go through that process. And if they still want to be in the same city, hey, great, more power to them. But let's look at what your life potentially could be like, and kind of line out where you want to be. And from that, then reverse engineer into disciplines, into actionable items, into goals and into milestones, and just kind of back that out. And what I've learned through this process, I've been doing it for 6 or 7 years now, using the same every 3 months, almost treating myself almost as a public company that has to do a quarterly report, right? And what I've learned is, of course, you're not going to achieve every single aspect of your 3-year plan, but you'll be amazed at how similar your life does actually start to follow that pattern. And, so for instance, with my life plan is, hey, within 3 years, I'm going to be fluent in Spanish. Okay, well, no, I'm not fluent in Spanish, but, I've got a nice little, smattering of Spanish. I can get by. I can speak mid-range Spanish. So it doesn't come necessarily true 1 for 1, but it does help. And this is what businesses do. I mean, businesses plan a strategic plan. A lot of them do 5-year plans. I recommend doing a 3-year, especially in the world today. Things are changing so rapidly. And I always recommend every 3 months, just going back in, taking maybe an hour, revise and update your 3-year narrative, 3-year, strategic plan, if you want to call it. So that's one of the things I would advise people to do.
Hey, well, that's a ton. And one of the questions I usually wrap up the podcast with, we actually did together, which is what's your life philosophy, when we kind of started opening that already. So it made me have to kind of come up with a new question for you, because I couldn't ask you what your life philosophy is, although it's well explained here. It's you're gonna be a little on your feet for this one. All right.
Okay, yeah. Throw it out.
I started smiling because you were talking about creating a life narrative. And one of the questions I tend to ask when I'm in group therapy or something with someone is, what kind of movie title or category would your life be in? Are you a drama or a horror? What is your narrative? And rather than your life philosophy, because I know you're very aware of life narratives and what those are, I don't care, 30 seconds, minute, however you feel like it. A trailer for your life to get others to tune into you.
Oh yeah, a trailer. Let's see. I mean, I would just, it would be one of, I guess the first responder aspect would be involved. I mean, because you do want to engage the audience, right? I mean, you want them to come see your movie. And so for me, I think it would be various places throughout the world, a few disasters thrown in, then at the same time, throw in, how it's being applied and some of the success stories of people applying it to their life, and different life philosophies. And I guess, yeah, my trailer would be about that type of a lifestyle, keeping a simple lifestyle. In my trailer, you would look at, I would not be, you wouldn't see any jewelry, you wouldn't see any flashy cars, you wouldn't see any, bling. My trailer would definitely just be me, a man with 2 backpacks, 10 seconds in India, 10 seconds in, maybe you'd see a hurricane ripping in off the coast or something like that. And that's, I guess, what I would sell as a trailer.
The title of your new documentary, A Man in 2 Backpacks.
Yeah.
Coming to a devastation near you.
Right. There you go. So
we could do this all day, man. I forgot there's a thing I got to run out to. My daughter poked her head in the door.
Yeah, no problem.
I delayed us half an hour today due to our little technology issue here, but that we fixed, man. So we did get 2 hours in, but you and I are going to be working together for who knows how much longer over this little project. So you'll do this again with me, I'm sure, right?
Oh yeah, of course. Anytime you want to. I'm sure anytime there's new material or something going on, we can hook up again. And
well, I think people should see a you to me that you and I do on something. I wrote it in some of my fury of notes over here of something that we could work together on, but that may happen, may not, whatever.
Yeah, well, I think we could take your book and why not turn it into an online course, right? So people can take your online course, get your book. I mean, it gives them a different way of accessing the material, because, some people, they just, no matter how good a book is, no matter how engaging it is, they would rather just, approach it from a series of short videos to where they can, while they're on the subway or on a bus, they can just gobble it up 3 minutes at a time, 3-minute videos at a time, broken down. So I think online learning online is a good way. Once again, if they go and they visit my profile right now on udemy.com, they throw in the coupon code Rampage. I mean, all of the profits, those are going to go down to Ecuador to help that lady rebuild her house. And once again, I really appreciate you having me on your podcast, having me on your show. It's great experience.
Hey, man, thank you. You make it the great experience, man. Will you email me that information so we can create a post when we do this that, tells the story of the family, who they're helping,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've got photos. I've got, the email from my friend down there. So, yeah, definitely.
That'd be great, man. And we can, hopefully pull some things together, too. I think I was going to tell everybody where to find you and your courses if you want to cover it one more time, which you did, but definitely cover it again, though.
Yeah, well, udemy.com. Go to my website, decisionskills.com. From Decision Skills, you'll see the courses down there. There's the goal setting course for free. And then I've discounted for the audience here using the coupon code Rampage, half price. If you take the Motivation for Learning and Performance course, I highly recommend it. You'll also get Dr. Bob Hoffman's book, an electronic version of that. And then you can also see me on YouTube. I've got some YouTube videos, Decision Skills YouTube channel, and there will be a video up about Cognitive Rampage that you can actually, so you can get a little insights into that. It doesn't reveal all the secrets. It just gives a high level overview. So if you really want the full package, I highly recommend it. You got to get Cognitive Rampage. And by all means, hook up with me on LinkedIn, hook up with me through my courses. I'm always looking for new ideas, new students, and willing to help. So, reach out to me.
You want to throw the Tinder ad in there too at the same time?
Yeah, that's one of the. I've never done the Tinder thing.
Totally kidding, man.
Yeah, I've heard about it, but it's just never tried that.
Yeah, my friend Sean Zernis, man, shout out to you, man. I'll see him soon. He's coming down for his birthday, but he sent me this hilarious picture to where it's a Tinder profile of a guy named Bill, number 33, and it's Bill from the movie Silence of the Lambs. And he's leaning forward in the door, and underneath it is he talks about loose skin is a no-no, all the way down to descriptive. And I'm like, that is so creepy.
Yo, that would be, that's actually pretty funny stuff, right? I mean, can you imagine some flipping through and it's like, I forget the Bill's line, my pretty?
Oh, man, they linked all of it. They go, as long as you show up with lotion in a basket.
The lotion, he puts the lotion on, right? Oh, yeah, that's hilarious. Good stuff, man. Good times.
Okay, awkward way to end the podcast. Good God.
Yeah.
Hey, man, I love it, dude. I look forward to working with you, man, on these projects. And honestly, man, anybody else listening, if you're interested in getting into not only making decisions in life and how to make better ones through my book, but look up Richard Feenstra. But I also would suggest, man, maybe you looking into offering, how to cultivate Udemy's for people that may have a vision, because I'm really into helping people cultivate podcasts for what they do. I want everybody usually comes on here. I'm like, start a podcast, sometimes annoyingly to them. And, for you, I think, digital nomad, dude, I think that is so neat. We'll talk off air. Let's not give it all away, huh?
All right.
But you should do that. You should be reaching out, showing people, because you're helping me with this. You brought me to this. You're going to be my mentor in the Udemy thing. It's already there. So, I mean, I think that's a service, man, that you really offer some people, man.
Yeah. No, I'm right there with you. And in fact, I already, just like I worked with Bob and I'm going to work with you, anybody who's listening, if you have an idea, if you have a course that you just think, you want to teach, by all means, reach out to me and I'm more than willing to help you, whether it's just advice or actually a collaboration.
Yeah, because guys, I'm telling you all, the video he threw together by reading my book, I was just like, what? I mean, I was like, that is amazing in a minute and 30. I don't think I could explain it that well in a minute and 30 seconds. And I'm telling you, so yeah, please reach out if you're interested in doing that, man. You're the man for that. But hey, man, enjoy the States while you're here. I hope to touch base back with you, before you head out, man.
Yeah, oh, definitely. We'll stay in touch, and even if I'm down there, man, I've got Wi-Fi. I'll have my office with me. So
a man and 2 backpacks.
Yeah, all right, sounds good. Thanks a lot,
brother. Hey, man, love you, dude. Take care.
All right, bye.
Bye.